Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Shrink Chats. I'm Monica Burton.
I'm Annette Ryder, and today we have our esteemed guest, Dr. Harold Shinitzky. He is here to talk with us about sports psychology and getting back to sports. And he's a renowned motivational speaker. He has a project, The Winning Edge, a champion mindset. Boy, Harold, I sure need a champion mindset during this pandemic. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. Thank you very much, both of you, for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm excited to be able to share this information.
Oh, that's great. Boy, we need you. We're watching the sports come back in my house, and as we're watching the baseball, we're seeing then they have to take a break because of some of the scares, and then the basketball's kind of isolated altogether, and the hockey, that's like we wouldn't, it's kind of a little extra bonus that we're getting to watch that right now. And I know you work with swimmers and all different kinds of golfers, tennis players, all different kinds of athletes. What is the word on the street? How everybody feeling? Because kids are going back to school and parents are nervous, but the kids want to play.
Well, I'll tell you, the difference between some of the professional sports right now, like I was just down in Bradenton, down on the IMG campus with WNBA. So they're in a bubble. And that gives a lot of comfort and security for them, where like baseball, they're living at home, they're traveling to the stadiums, they're flying to, so that causes a lot of angst. And football, obviously, because they get, shall we say, close to each other, there is concern associated with that. But it is great because so many of the young adults that I work with, their sports are beginning to ramp up. And many of the tennis players are now starting to have their tournaments beginning. Golfers are having that same opportunity. So what we've looked at is how to use this pandemic as a benefit, actually. And that's all about your mindset. So whether you're an athlete or not, I always bring up the phrase, an external constant. So let me just give you an example. If one of my football players went to University of Miami and got drafted by the Green Bay Packers, he would call me and say, "Ooh, you know how cold it gets up here?" I'm like, yeah, I'm from Chicago. Cold. I know exactly how cold it gets there. But it's not just cold for you, it's cold for everyone. So either you look for an excuse to unconsciously, when you fail, have it ready, or because it's an external constant that affects everyone, you adapt. So either you look for an excuse or you adapt. And we can do that in any sport, the winds of the British Open, the heat of the Australian Open. It's not just that for you, it's that way for everyone. So here we are with the pandemic, and a lot of people, our routines were messed up. A lot of the freedoms that we were so accustomed to were suddenly disappeared. We're around our own family members, which can get a little annoying. So the reality was, either you use it as an excuse to not be prepared, to have it as in your back pocket as the reason to blame, or you adapt. So I have been using this time with all my athletes and anyone that I work with to better themselves. So I have people that are studying computer programming online right now while they're locked down. Other people are getting their certifications. Athletes are getting in better shape than they were before. So anyone who's listening right now, rather than focusing on this as a negative, let's focus it as a positive. I get it. There are people who have physically have succumbed to this. People have lost careers. I totally get that. And I have complete compassion and feel for those individuals. The majority of individuals, rather than use this as an excuse, let's use it as a reason to actually better yourself.
Well, Harold, I think I'm going to steal that to do with some of my marital work too, just so you know.
Perfect.
Watch out,
external
couples.
Constants.
I'll blame all of my therapy the next 2 weeks on Harold here. But right, like when couples are having difficulty, it's the same thing. Rather than look at it as an excuse, look at it as a reason to adapt. Like, well, wait, how can I make this work for this conversation with my partner?
Absolutely.
What the heck's wrong with them?
Yeah, and it's always easier to point the finger of blame. And in substance abuse, they talk about look at the three coming back at you.
Right.
So rather than externalize, what's my role in this responsible?
Absolutely. I think one of the things as like a parent, I have two boys, and how to kind of talk to them about, we love sports, we love being active, and we can be active, it's just not in the same way. But my older son, I mean, he loves tackle football, and he can't play right now because his league was canceled for the year.
Yep.
And so we, it's how to acknowledge acknowledge the loss, and at the same time, just what you're saying, adapt, and how can we do some other things.
I like the way you're saying that for your son, that we have to validate our children and what they're experiencing. It's not nullified just because we don't want them to feel that. Feelings are 100% accurate for you. And so everything that your child and anyone who's listening, everything you think, feel, say, and do makes sense to you. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's right or the best, but for you, it's right and best. So if I don't apply myself doing my homework usually, I'll tell you exactly why I don't. Or if I may skip school, well, because to me, everything I think, feel, say, and do makes sense to me. I run in conflict maybe with my mom or my dad because everything they think, feel, say, and do makes sense to them. And so acknowledging, validating, legitimating is vitally important. It's the old seek to understand, and only then shall you be understood. So helping them to be able to understand it. From a neurological point of view, one of the coolest things I love to do with individuals that I work with is I always point out, like if I did a brain scan, I'd show that if I asked you to really think about something complex, higher cortical function, one area of your brain would light up. And then if I brought up something that was really emotional, something that really touches your heart, I would actually show a different region of your brain lights up. And then when I asked you to actually do a behavior, I would literally show a different region of your brain lights up, completely unrelated parts of your brain. So I have them do a visual equation. I have them write the word thoughts, / feelings, thoughts / feelings, does not equal, the does not equal sign, behaviors. Thoughts / feelings, thoughts and feelings do not equal behaviors. You can have any thought you want, you can have any feeling you want, but ultimately you do control your behaviors. At a young age, lots of kids put those all together. Your little ones, you're like, stop that, don't do that, put that down, get that out of your mouth. And it's because their thoughts and feelings become immediately behavior.
Right.
But this part of our brain right here, the difference between us and chimps, the frontal lobe of the brain, allows us to inhibit our impulses. So you can have a thought or a feeling, but you ultimately do control your behaviors.
Yeah, repeatedly. I don't know, probably 10 times a week say what I do, what I say, how I act, how I react. That's the only thing I'm in control of.
Right.
If I could control my thoughts and feelings, or anyone's thoughts and feelings, I'd have a line out my door for, wrapping around the world several times, because everybody would like those things to be controlled, but they're not.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. We used to say, when I first got into the field way back a long time ago, when trees were invented, we used to say to our athletes, all right, now go out there and don't react. And so we discovered we were not that bright, because brain science kicked in and we were able to do brain scans, and we were able to identify that humans react. We can't help it but react. So we determined from the research, the goal isn't to not react. The goal is, when you do react, how quickly can you respond? So reacting is emotion, responding is cognitive. So how do you actually problem solve it? So if I ask both of you right now, think of the favorite food you like to eat at the favorite restaurant you like to go and have. And just envision the smell and the aroma that you get when you walk in, the sounds, the sights. And if I said to you, we're going there and it's just opened, the smiles on your faces right now cannot be helped. That is a reaction you have.
Right.
Now, if I tell you we're going to go there and unfortunately it's closed,
yeah.
that bummer of happens. We all do it. So the goal for anyone that I'm working with is, yes, you will react. That is part of being a human. But the goal is, how quickly can you respond? And there are a multitude of ways that you can manage a situation by your response.
So in there, it seems like to me is that little clever space where the well-practiced athlete their reaction maybe just genetically is really close to what a good response, like how to catch the ball, how to respond to it, how to move to it, all that practice gets the response and they react very precise in that behavior then.
You are spot on. When we look at the most elite of the elite, so if someone was competing in the Olympics, most of us would say, oh my gosh, I would just be freaking out. And it's like,
Right.
yes, you would be, because your emotional reaction would dominate.
Right.
And the elite of the athletes, or if you think about it, when someone is doing a classroom verbal presentation, public speaking, the most common anxiety that we see in society when it comes to, you know, social anxiety, getting up in front of people, you will react. The goal is how quickly do you respond? And so realizing that my emotions aren't serving me any benefit. If something happens and it's really good, I'm like, yes, but I'm not learning from it. What was it that made it successful? If I do something and it doesn't work out, like, oh, I think I'm ready for the exam, Mom, I don't need to study. And then I take the exam and I get a C minus. I realize that everything I think, feel, say, and do, well, in that case, I was a little bit off. And the way I react might be, I'm bummed out. Well, my negative reaction doesn't serve me any benefit. So you want to give it, in sports, we talk about, we want you to give yourself a private lesson from you to you. And so there's this kind of analysis that you have people practice. After they react, we call it the post-shot routine. Everyone's got the preparation ahead of time, the pre-shot. But what's far more important with learning, going from emotion to cognition, is asking yourself 3 questions. What was the plan? What actually happened? And what do I learn from this so as not to repeat it? Mm-hmm. So it's not just I sit there and I go, I'm stupid. I just bombed that test. That doesn't do me any benefit. Mm-hmm. Learning from it suddenly makes it successful. A loss is not failure if you learn from it. Mm-hmm. A loss is not failure if you learn from it. So we want to go from emotion to cognition, and you help people practice by doing that process of what was the plan, what actually happened, what do I learn from it? By the way, if I'm successful, what was the plan? Study and do well on an exam. What actually happened? I did well on an exam. What do I learn from that so as to repeat it? So on either if it's negative or positive, I want to shift to a learning so I can take that forward.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that really parallels something I read years ago. And I think with Barbara Rody, we put it in our book about this whole concept that an article came out about why are so many Asian Americans valedictorians? And part of that is that tiger mama syndrome, which is what you just described. When children are young in Asian American families, their failures are fine as long as they learn something from it.
Absolutely.
And then you can see how that builds, you know, kind of a straight A student or a top-notch student, because if all through your elementary years, you know, failures, no one's getting upset with you that you didn't do well in school or you didn't do well, as long as you learned something.
I love it. When we look at this in the long term for anyone, some people say, oh, my self-confidence sometimes takes a hit. You know, I struggle with my self-confidence. In sports, I oftentimes will point out to individuals, your self-confidence is not supposed to be situationally dependent. So I don't ride my highest highs because that means I ride my lowest lows. But reality, your self-confidence should be equal to your average. So whatever your average is, and I'll just use tennis for an example. If I can serve 70% of my first serves in, that's my average. But that doesn't mean I serve 70% all the time. There's a range, a high and a low, and here's my average. And my average tells me how do I do in the long term. So the question I always ask is, or the statement is, your self-confidence should be equal to your average, exclamation mark, and is it improving? And just imagine that in life, in anything you do. If you look at yourself as, you know, for the most part, I'm a kind-hearted person, you know, and then one day if you get angry and someone says, wow, you're an angry person. I'm like, well, no, I actually not an angry person. But am I also improving? You know, am I a B student? You know, on this exam, I may not do well, but am I a B student on average, and am I improving? It's all about that kind of improvement. I had an NFL coach whose team was undefeated going late into the season. They already clinched a playoff berth. They already had clinched home field advantage. They ended up playing a losing record team, and the losing record team beat their pants. And the coach realized that the opposing team figured out something about their defense that they were unaware of and no one had taken advantage of. And so the next couple of weeks, they actually fixed it. They addressed it. And this coach says to this day, if it wasn't for losing to that team, they wouldn't have made the change because they ended up going on and winning the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Some team in the postseason would have picked it off and they would have been out because they would have lost one game, and that's all. It's single elimination. So for everyone that's out there, kind of take a look at yourself. Are there areas that I can improve on? Sure, there's room for all of us to have improvement. Mm-hmm. What's my average? It's really a reflection of who I am. Some days I'm going to be really good, and if this is my average, so I want to figure out what is it about this moment in time that allows me to be successful. If I'm struggling, what is it about this that I can learn from? So what is my average, and is it improving?
It's kind of like the philosophy of we actually do better when we fail. Mm-hmm. Because if we take that approach of how do we learn from this failure, what do I need to learn about myself and how can I improve? It's, if we never fail, we never really learn anything.
You are hitting the nail on the head with that one. I think Einstein actually talked about that he didn't fail like 2,000 times for the life of our, no, that was Edison. Edison.
Yeah.
Einstein would have said it, but Edison invented it. So the question comes up, he didn't fail 2,000 times. He discovered 2,000 times not to make a light bulb.
I try to encourage when my kids fail at sports, I try to, I bring up those examples, like Michael Jordan didn't make the basketball team, like all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes I think it's hard to motivate kids. Well, at least my two, when they're in that stuck state of, I'm so upset, I'm so disappointed, we lost the big game,
mm-hmm.
So I think it's just knowing when. I don't know. You tell me, Harold. Knowing when to say, okay, let's look at this and let's look at what did I learn? How can I improve?
That's beautiful.
Sometimes when they're in that heat of the moment, it's hard to get reflective like that.
Well, it's okay to let people be emotional. It's okay for the kids to be sad and hurt. Mm-hmm. But at some point when they can get some detachment, I always tell parents, do not go analyzing right after a game. That can be doubly frustrating for your child. Let them kind of just debrief on their own. Let it, let their emotions, kind of vent. You don't want them to be out of control. You don't want them to be, kicked out of a sport for, striking out or something like that. But at a young age, I always want to emphasize in anything, there are no guarantees in life. As adults, if I asked you, what are the two guarantees in life?
You're going to die.
Death and taxes. That's right.
And taxes.
Right.
Death and taxes.
But besides that, and for the young adults listening right now, they're going, what? You'll get it someday in the future.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I always want to point out, there are no guarantees in life. Study your hardest. It doesn't guarantee an A. Work your hardest for a sport. Doesn't guarantee you make the team. Be the coolest person, in your class, and you ask someone out. Doesn't guarantee they say yes. In life, there are no guarantees. The only thing you ever do in life, in every aspect of your life, is increase your probability of success. What can I do to increase my probability of success? So if I want to get good grades, if someone tells me, oh, I'm just going to try harder, I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
So what do you have to do to be, well, okay, we got to go to class. We got to prepare beforehand. I got to do my homework. I got to ask questions that I don't know. I can meet with the teacher. Maybe I can have a study buddy. If there's a study group for an exam, all these things, I don't have to do them all every single day. But if I keep doing these things on a regular basis, I'm increasing my probability of success. And that's all we can ever do in life. People might be the proper fit for a promotion in a company. It doesn't guarantee they get that promotion.
Right.
Relationships, it takes, you're 100% responsible for your 50% of the relationship.
Right.
You can do everything, and there's this other person who has a significant impact on the longevity of this relationship, and they may choose to behave poorly.
Mm-hmm.
The goal in life, I always try to teach to the youngins that I work with, is this idea: there are no guarantees. The only thing you ever do is increase your probability of success. So let's figure out as many of these things as you can do, just so you can keep moving in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now we're kind of putting this together with like a little bit of how we're all responding to the pandemic, right? We're trying to increase our probabilities of success that we will not get it, right? We want to be successful at not getting it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And not spreading it.
Yes. And we're learning more and more. It is a novel virus, which means we didn't really have the knowledge of it every day, because the good thing about science is the research that's being done helps us to make educated decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Does it mean that we don't discover new information? Does it mean that we don't change our protocols? No, that's the whole point of it. You need to make sure, if you're working on a vaccine, well, if we see some promise anecdotally, well, that's cool, but you have to do the studies behind it, because there may be serious consequences, and it may only fit for a specific subgroup. And so all of us are figuring out that, well, okay, how is it transmitted based on the best research and science behind it? What can we do to decrease that? And again, it's that, as you're just pointing out, how do we increase our probability that we can return to whatever normal is in the not too distant future?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We just did an episode on pandemic burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really based off of a couple of articles that we read on even like how high achievers are really struggling with this burnout feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And all of our professional athletes are high achievers, right? So have you come across this yet? Just this burnout feeling of, I really have this focus, I want to do well, I want to do this, but I'm just so exhausted, or just that feeling.
There's a lot of people who are these type A or high achievers. We oftentimes can lovingly refer to them as perfectionistic. Mm-hmm. And I always like to point out to individuals that life isn't about perfection. It's how you handle imperfection. Mm-hmm. And I follow that up with perfection. If you use it as a motivational drive to improve, that's good, because we all have room for improvement. But perfection should never be a criteria to judge yourself by. Mm-hmm. It's singular and an outcome. The reality is,
can't guarantee those.
No. And if you were the third best neurosurgeon on the planet, you would quit because you're perfectionistic. I'm not the best. Mm-hmm. The lunacy behind that idea, if you're the 99th wealthiest person on the planet, you would stop working because of perfectionism. There's a lot of people who are also very controlling. Mm-hmm. And they try to get everything, this is my routine. And it becomes a ritual. It's not a routine. It becomes something they must do. And so I tend to look at it as the most controlling people I ever work with are the least controlled people I work with. Because when something doesn't go exactly the way they want, they have a real hard time managing it. Mm-hmm. So with the pandemic, since its beginning, and a lot of people were talking about their routines have been messed up, their opportunities for kind of escapism or freedom or social support have been kind of interfered with, that a lot of people realize that the stress is building for them. And so I wanted to kind of share with a lot of the people that I was working with, there are these 3 ways to manage this kind of social isolation. And it actually comes from living in Chicago years ago, where we would have terrible winters, we'd have tremendous snowstorms or ice storms, and you'd be stuck in your home, couldn't even get out. And if you got out, the roads were impassable. So it's called cabin fever. And the 3 ways to deal with social isolation, and I want everybody to practice this who's listening, is the idea that you want to be productive, you want to have enjoyables, and you want to be filled with compassion. So every day, even though the routines that we've had before have changed. Remember, it's an external constant, so I have to adapt. I have to create my routine. So how can I be productive today? Setting up a checklist or tasks, a to-do list, start and a finish, short-term goals and long-term goals, things that give me value, worth, identity every day. I can control those. In addition, you want to do things that are enjoyable. And so for each one of us, that's a different thing. I mean, what makes me happy is probably different than what might you make happy. And okay, so we get that. So having things that put a smile on your face, give you joy, pleasure, enjoyment. Now, the nice thing is if they can be a 2-for-1. So if something that you can do that's enjoyable also is something that's beneficial, it's productive. So as one of my athletes said, you know, on my free time, I like watching Netflix documentaries. And I was like, oh, that's great, because it's enjoyable for you, but it's also productive. You're learning something. So it's a 2-for-1. So productivity, enjoyables, and compassion, the third one of these things. So it's productive, enjoyable, compassion. Everyone's dealing with this in a different way. And some people are very stressed and some people are becoming overwhelmed. And if any symptoms you have been exacerbated, anxiety individuals are more anxious, depressed people are more depressed. So what we want to realize is that knowledge is power. If I know that this is causing people to be irritable, annoying, snarky, sarcastic, even kind of rude to loved ones, I don't control them, I control me. And so understanding that allows me to lead with compassion, where I can be more understanding. I don't have to mirror them. I can be kinder. I don't have to give power to kind of the ugliness that might come at me. So in my life, every day, I have to be productive. I have to do enjoyables, and I want to lead with compassion.
And again, you're getting back to couples therapy 101, right?
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, what I'm talking about, you're right. This is not just applicable to athletes. This is for anyone, whether you're a child developing or a marital couple that's working on having a healthy, loving relationship.
We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the social isolation with Dr. Shinitzky here on Shrinks Chat.
Shrinks Chat is proudly sponsored by St. Petersburg Therapy, providing counseling for individuals, couples, and groups for over 20 years. Now offering the convenience of telemed, online meeting for your health and safety. For more information, visit online at stpetersburgtherapy.com.
Monica Burton is a licensed marriage and family therapist based in St. Petersburg, Florida, with over 17 years of experience. Monica offers individual, family, and couples therapy, and during this time of COVID-19 is offering teletherapy. Monica invites you to check out her YouTube channel, where she offers great tips and advice on relationships, parenting, family health, resolving conflict, and coping with stress. Go to YouTube to find Monica Burton LMFT. There are new segments every Thursday. Or check out Monica's website at monicaburtonlmft.com.
What if you could train your brain to think healthier thoughts? Cope Notes uses daily text messages to help you do exactly that. All you need is a cell phone and a brain. To learn more and try it for yourself, visit www.copenotes.com.
Welcome back to Shrinks Chat, and we are here with the esteemed Dr. Harold Shinitzky. We're so excited to keep talking about social isolation and how we're managing this in sports. And before we left for the break, I was thinking of this idea of how we have to kind of push ourselves through this and kind of think about being productive. I was even talking with some of my clients recently, like instead of maybe a to-do list, maybe a to-do list, like at the end of the day, like what did you do? You know, so that you could look at your list of ta-da.
I love it.
Yeah. And notice what you did, maybe what you learned about yourself, what surprised you that made you giggle, what caught you off guard, and small accomplishments like, hey, if you're having trouble brushing your teeth is a victory.
That is so true. The little victories. There's a great video out there by a phenomenal general that many people have seen, and he talks about he wants everyone to, when you wake up in the morning, make your bed.
Mm-hmm.
You start
Oh,
your
yes.
day with a victory, and everything else builds from that. I had a friend of mine who worked at the Chicago Board of Trade, and it was very interesting. I mean, if you've ever seen these images, there's people standing in these bright, like lab coats, and they're sending signals of buying or selling, and they're using these hand signals, and it's loud and it's crazy. It is.
Yeah.
And he was there for maybe an hour in the day, and then he calls me up and he says, "Hey, you want to get together for breakfast?" I'm like, "Aren't you supposed to be at work?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I'm leaving now." I'm like, "What?" And so we're sitting at breakfast, and he made some deals, and he did well on those deals, and he left. And I was like, "Well, why'd you leave?" He said, "Well, you can't go broke if you take a profit." I thought, how fantastic is that? Yeah. So
your
life,
game is up, right? Isn't
Right.
that yeah.
his mentality was right. He's always ascending. I made what I needed to make. I'm done. I don't have to like try because of greed to get even more. And I don't have to lose it all back to the system. Little victories. The greatest journey begins with a single step.
Right.
Confucius was right with that comment. That
Mm-hmm.
if you're moving in that direction, I like it. If you're brushing your teeth.
I often tell, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you're taking care of your hygiene. Your personal hygiene is a statement of self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to kind of have that as a foundation. So taking care of those little things, they do mean a lot. Sorry.
No, I agree. That's what I tell my clients is at the end of the night, focus on one thing that you did do instead of all the things that you didn't do. And there's even a 5-minute journal. I actually do it every night, but actually in the morning and at night, where it's just 3 things that are going to make the day great, 1 positive affirmation. And at the end of the night, it's the same thing. Like, what are the 3 things that did make the day great? And what's 1 thing that would have made it better? And so it's a very quick little, it's a gratitude journal almost, but it's a very quick little mindset of how to stay focused on the positive and the small things that you're doing instead of, these big things that maybe you want to do, but then you didn't get a chance to do, and now you're disappointed. Like instead, let's focus on the small things.
I love it. Every one of these comments, I certainly hope your listeners actually are writing these down feverishly and I got to do that. Well, Johnny, we're going to be practicing this today. Aha.
Yeah. Right.
And
I hope so too.
I did make my kids and I actually listened to that TED Talk with the military about making your bed.
Yeah.
So we try to, well, we do it every day. Like, go in and make your bed, boys. So to all those parents out there, or just people even without kids, it's actually fabulous talk to listen to.
If you could take a look at what are the things that I as an individual believe I need or could benefit from. And so some of the parents listening right now, you want to take a look, and it's not just your children, it's yourself included, that we all have room for improvement. And if you want to, be a better role model, you want to acknowledge that, oh yeah, hey, I'm working on this, whether it's, am I increasing some skill? Am I decreasing, a problem that I have? Am I resolving, fixing something? Do I sit down and listen to basic foreign language tapes to improve myself? Do I need to kind of quiet myself and work on some mindfulness techniques? I always want to point out to adults in particular, because when I do this with kids, it's magic, but for your listening audience and your viewing audience, I tend to say, and this is one of those biggies right here. So if you got anything you're taking notes with, write these things down. Okay. So shh, don't tell anyone this. Okay. So here are the 3 keys to life. Okay. So here they are. Perspective, self-talk, and behavior. Perspective. We all have an initial point of view for everything. We can't help it. but we all have a perspective on something. So if I said to everyone who's listening, what's your point of view on sushi? Some of you will say, sweet, yes, I'm there. Positive perspective. Some of you would say, ew, yucky, gross, ugh. Okay, negative. No one has it neutral. I mean, when people say, yeah, I can take it either way. Well, wait, you can take it, which means it's neutral more to the positive side. Yeah, be well, but, and like Halloween houses. Oh, spooky. I don't want to do it. And others are like, oh, it's fun. We have a point of view, perspective on everything. So it's either positive or negative on everything in our life. So it could be staying up late to study hard versus no, it's bedtime. I'm going to sleep. Or being kinder to your loved one. Regardless of how they behave, I'm going to control myself. So positive or negative on my perspective. And then we move to self-talk. And self-talk either confirms my initial point of view or challenges my initial point of view. So if I have a positive, I could confirm it or challenge it. If I have a negative, I can confirm it or challenge it. So it could be, I don't know about public speaking. It's scary. But I know in order to get this new job, I'm going to have to be able to speak to my employees. So, I'm going to prep my material ahead of time. Yeah, I'm going to join Toastmasters and I'm going to practice in the community. So my self-talk either talks me into or talks me out of whatever that situation is based on my perspective, which is either positive or negative. So, but I always want to point that out to individuals. It starts with your perspective. It moves and either gets confirmed with this internal dialogue. So if someone's done something that you go, really, you did that again? And they'll explain to you, yeah, well, I was doing this, and their justifications. Everything that comes out of their mouth that they're trying to get you to buy is exactly the dialogue they use for themselves to talk themselves into doing that thing. So it's perspective, self-talk, and then we get to behavior. So just because I might be terrified of public speaking, and just because I might speak negatively about my ability on it, I still have the ability to stand up. Physically, I do. I still have the ability to talk. We call that public speaking. Now, I might be shaking. People may giggle because I drop my notes, and the teacher will, in fact, judge me and grade me. But I still can do it. It's, as we said earlier, behavior is unrelated to my thoughts and my feelings. It is really a choice that I can do. And the cool thing is, whatever you practice, you get better at, whatever it is. So at one point you didn't know math, now you know math a little better than you used to. At one point you were short, now you're a little taller. In life, we actually continue to have this improvement. And for individuals that I'm working with, if you can help them understand those three, so the kids also, that I can master this behavior if I keep practicing it in a way that is learning from the past. I can challenge my negative self-talk to handle this situation. And I can then alter my perspective. I was on a bike trail the other day, and apparently some people were out early on a long jog, and one of them got out there super early and took the chalk that you write on, sidewalks, and wrote down there, "I heart humidity." How great, because as they're out there jogging along in this Florida heat and humidity, they would come across these little reminders, and there were a whole bunch of different ones. And instead of saying, "Oh, I can't believe it's so hot and humid," it's, "No, I love humidity. My perspective is there. Bring it on. I am going to thrive in this." So in life, it starts with your perspective on every situation. You either confirm it or refute it, your internal self-talk, and then you have your behaviors that you can engage in that can alter the outcome by virtue of the way you practice.
And that to me just is why people should go to a therapist. Because when you're in what your perspective and your self-talk, you don't even see how it's leading the behavior, which then self-confirms the whole loop. But a therapist can help break that down, because they, of course, are trained and they don't have that perspective. And actually they see the varying perspectives, and they also hear the self-talk that the client doesn't necessarily even hear, because when you're in it, it's yours and it's just real. Like it's just, oh, this is the way I am, right? How many times have the three of us heard that? This is the way I am. I'm just like this. And I'm like, no, the way you are is definitely trained. I would love it if you were choosing this, but you're not right now. It's choosing you.
Yeah.
It's just react. And the response is yet to be had. Because, if you start thinking, oh, my partner's out to get me, or they said that with a mean tone, oftentimes I'll hear that because I do a lot of couples work. They said it with a.
Uh-oh. And that's
Hey.
paused.
Hey,
Sometimes I don't, but
You paused for a minute, Annette.
Oh, darn.
Yeah, that was that kernel of information that changed the world, and unfortunately, you froze.
You missed it.
So those who are listening, you're gonna have to get the transcript. Yeah, you're right. The perspective, if someone brings that to the situation, the glasses that are tinted in a certain way, they see the world. So a lot of people, before their loved one even expresses an emotion, before words come out, they already have an expectation of what it's going to be. So my loved one is going to be snarky.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of loved ones out there that are snarky and sarcastic and rude. And
I can be snarky.
yeah. But some people become so ingrained in understanding patterns that they anticipate that this is what they said, this is what they meant. I can't even hear the words they're saying. Kids do this with their parents all the time. If, I'm going to ask for something, they're going to say no. So I always like to tell parents that you need to be as best as possible a united front. Obviously, there are two of you. You think differently. You're trying to be as united as possible, because children are like water. They flow to the path of least resistance. So if they know I can go to dad because we have this special relationship, and, we're bonded, he'll let me do it. And mom will say, no, you need to eat your vegetables first, or you need to do your homework. I'm going to dad. And the parents need to understand this, because a lot of times parents, when they watch one parent struggle with a child versus themselves, some parents, their underlying issues interfere. And so they're seeking to have a healthy, loving relationship with their child, but it's really not a healthy, loving relationship with their child. I'm just having a better relationship than my spouse. And that's my unresolved issue. And so for a parent to understand, and I always point this out to parents, if your child is rude or disrespectful to your spouse, they are being rude and disrespectful to you. You two are a team. And when your child behaves this way to your spouse, they are being this way to you. And you need to intervene as well, just as the other parent, because it can't just be, well, you didn't, oh, look at that spam call. You don't have this special relationship which allows your child to be rude to them, to your spouse. That is your unresolved issue for a need for approval, and to have this type of hierarchy that somehow mine is special. And a lot of parents find that to be a bummer to hear, because you and your spouse need to work a little bit more on this. And if you have a different way of looking at things, I get it, you will. But you have to figure out how you're going to have this united front, this message to your child on this topic. If you disagree, out of sight, out of the earshot of your child, you guys have this adult conversation. But in that moment, you guys have got to figure out how to work collaboratively.
Right. That's so important.
We do this whole presentation on raising
yeah.
a resilient child, and that's one of the foundational aspects about that.
Kids need to know that we're going to hold the boundaries, and that together we are a united front. Even in good co-parenting models, when parents are divorced, it's even the same model. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. But.
Yeah, I work. fortunately, I get referrals from judges for some high conflict cases. And I had this one high conflict case. They were divorcing for 9 years. 9 years they were divorcing. You know, there's only two people who are benefiting from that, and those are the attorneys.
For sure.
Oh my gosh, it was horrible. The kids were just dragged through it. So the judge refers the kids to me, and I'm working with the kids. And somebody asked me, like, when is this going to be resolved? And I point out to them, it was a quote from a leader in the world a number of years ago, and that was, but I convert it to marital couples. When is this going to be resolved? Well, unfortunately, at least one of the divorced couple, one of the exes, hates their ex more than they love their kids. And as long as they live with this mentality that I hate my ex more than I love my kids, I will continue to do everything in my power to ruin this other person who I'm now divorced from. And I've already started my own life, maybe even gotten married, and maybe even started a new family. But I am so filled with just toxicity that I invest all this energy in creating this ongoing long-term conflict. And it's a horrible reality of individuals who have this need to be in the power position and dominating. It is a gross dysfunction of an individual who moves on in life but cannot move on from that emotionally.
It's definitely not a champion mindset.
It's definitely not a champion's mindset. Yeah.
No.
You know, it's interesting when you were saying that individuals say, this is just who I am. You know, and I always want to point out to them, and pardon my indelicate language for anyone who's listening right now, but I always want to emphasize, I would never damn your future because of your past.
Right.
If you really want to tell me anything about yourself, just think about anything at all you want to tell me about yourself. The only thing you can factually tell me about is your past. You claim to be able to say, this is who I am, this is who I've been, this is who I am, this is who I will always be. Oh my gosh, I'm always going to be shy and I won't be able to present in front of people, or, you know, any of these kind of damning my future because of my past.
Right.
Those
I got a temper.
Yes, it's in my blood. It's my background. Yeah. Like, okay, so factually, the only thing you can tell me about is your past. But in reality, you are addressing it now. And the future, if you do it differently, might in fact be different. So you can start the beginning of the belief in the possibility. So I was challenged by this. I am addressing this, and I will master this. The mindset that opens it up. Because if you say, this is just the way I was, am, and will ever forever be, you will have that internal dialogue that's constantly saying, this is the path that I must take. No other options exist. And so it's kind of fun. I'll actually turn to some of the kiddos I work with and I go, since you're so good at predicting the future, let's see,
Yes.
Wednesday is the lotto, you know, that they're having, the lottery. So
I
I'm going
need
to
some
ask
numbers.
you, I like you to pick 5 numbers, 1 through 60, and then Powerball 1 through 40. I'm going to write this down. I'm going to sign my name with this. I'm going to have your parents sign on this too, because you're a minor and you can't play the game. And I'm going to write here 50-50. If you win and I win, we'll split this 50-50. It goes to your family. They can do it and put it in a trust, but we're going to do this. And I'll buy the ticket and I'll come back in the next session and I'll go, wait a second, this is just 6 numbers. Oh, a day away. You couldn't even figure this one out? I think you may want to question your ability to predict the future. And so I have a little fun with it, but I point out the obvious, that you really don't predict the future, but you may damn the future by that internal self-talk that we had a little earlier that we chatted about.
Yes. What is that? Today is tomorrow's past. Ooh, are you stealing it from me, Harold?
I'm comparing it to another one that I love to have, which is today is the tomorrow you dreamt about yesterday.
Yes. Even better. Right. I try to tell people, like, it's not that I'm not interested in the past. I could be. We could spend a lot of sessions talking about the past, but part of the way we can handle the past is by working on what we got from the past, learning from it today. And sometimes by becoming the better person today, we today heal the past, which you can't go back and heal because none of us have time machines yet. That's the next big, I think, revolution in therapy. And then if we had such a time machine, because we worked on something today, we actually start to begin to change what could happen in the future.
Yeah,
Right.
it goes back to the post-shot routine. What was the plan? What actually happened? What do you learn from it to be able to move forward?
Right.
I always like to say, everyone see that? All your viewing audience, you see that?
I don't know
I
if we
can't
can
read
see
it.
That, no, it's a pen. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
just a pen.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. See it?
Okay.
All right, see that?
Yes.
I cannot help that I dropped it.
Mm-hmm.
It is now history.
Mm-hmm.
It is the exact same as the Roman Empire. I cannot change it. Now, if I dwell on the past, if I start speaking negatively to myself about this, I'm a moron, I'm a buffoon, I can't believe I'm not coordinated enough to hold onto a pen, you know, how can I handle anything? If I start dwelling in a negative, self-abusive way, I alter the way I actually manage any type of future growth potential. Now, can I learn from this? Maybe I need to hold on to it a little tighter. Maybe I just need to lay it down. You know, maybe I want to throw it over there. I don't know. But I can learn from this. And by doing that, and we always look at it as, how do you live and learn?
Mm-hmm.
Every decision we make, every decision that every single person is living makes is based on partial knowledge. Because you can never truly know all the information. So every decision you make is based off the best amount of information, hopefully, that you have, of working through the pros and cons, the costs, the benefits of action and inaction. And whatever decision you make is going to have positive and negative consequences, rewards. And afterwards, you're going to have new information. You're going to look back retrospectively and kind of go, oh, I could have, should have, whatever. At that time, you want to be able to realize I'm making the best decision I can based on the limited information I have. And I have to feel comfortable with that. If I discover something in the future is different, I live and I learn from it. I don't want to dwell on it. I don't want to beat myself up. I want to be able to move forward.
I think some of that is self-compassion. You know, I made the best decision I could with what was right in front of me. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier too, is just, what am I learning?
Yeah.
You know, what do I need to learn from the past in order to help me now and to keep moving forward, instead of beating yourself up over, oh my God, I can't believe I made that decision. You know, it's like, you made the decision, you dropped the pen.
Yep.
You know, it's okay, now what? You know.
Right. That's that whole concept of like doing too much of a post-mortem or too much of a pre-mortem. Like, you know, worrying too much about, well, if I make this decision, then that'll happen, then this will happen. Rather than understanding that same learning curve you've been on is still happening.
Yeah.
So between now and next Friday, you'll have learned a whole bunch of pieces of information that will make that next decision out there on Friday a different decision than you could have predicted here on Monday.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And you need to allow that information and that learning curve to unfold a little bit and then make the next best decision, right? You know, I love this singer, Seth Clear. He says, do the next thing right or the next right thing.
Isn't that true?
Just like let it unfold a little bit. And then when you get to that day and that decision, you'll make the best decision there. And that's that compassion that we're talking about with yourself and the process of life, that it unfolds. It doesn't, you know, trying to make it unfold isn't really within your capacity from my experience.
Right.
That's that time machine again. How do I go back and fix that? Well, you know, we can't. You know, I find it interesting with couples. I find it interesting when they say things like, you know, I want to get back to where we were. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't want to get back to where you were, because that'll just end up bringing you right back here.
Right.
You know, you want to be able to make it better than it was before. You know, it's funny that we talk about that every behavior you engage in, you had to have given yourself permission to do. There isn't a single behavior you engage in that you haven't already given yourself permission to do. So there are some grotesquely morbid things I could say, and I'm not going to bring them up. I'm just going to phrase it that way, that if there's an opportunity, you would never do it. You would just never do certain things.
Right.
And it's because you've already said, nah, that's a line I'm not crossing. I do not grant myself permission. So every behavior I actually do engage in, it's because I'm granting myself permission. However, I can also at any point in my life, and this is what I always like to say, we're the only species on the planet that can alter our life trajectory. Just because you were stealing up to yesterday does not mean you must spend the rest of your God-given life stealing. You can actually retract permission. That is no longer an acceptable range of behaviors that I'm never engage in. So even in marital couples where someone behaves inappropriately, that person has to own it. That person has to be able to identify, are there certain emotions associated with it, like guilt? If you feel guilty, that's actually a good feeling. Not guilty because you got caught, guilty because you engaged in that behavior. Because guilt is a message to you, from you, that you haven't lived up to your highest standard. Well, do you learn from that? Are you apologetic, remorseful? Do you spend the rest of your life being a better person because of that behavior? And if you do, you can thrive. So I find that vitally important in couples.
Right. Well, I think we've covered everything there is in therapy today. You could take every thought we've had and expand it out and really understand how humans are and why we do what we do and how we do it, and also how it can all change like that.
Yes.
I am grateful for the opportunity of getting together with both of you. I am wishing you guys well with the program. I think it's a great forum where your audience can benefit from gathering information from experts in the field, and hopefully they'll find that their lives improve. So thank you for having me on as a guest.
Well, thank you, Harold. I'm so glad you said yes.
Yes.
Anytime. I'd be glad to be a part of this in the future, but just ask and I'm there.
You can find Dr. Shinitzky's stuff on his Facebook page and all over social media. And we'll linking all that to our social media too. And we are most appreciative of you being on the show and helping our audience out with all this free information today.
Yes, guys, don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and even YouTube, Shrink Chats. And thank you for listening today. Thanks again, Harold.
My pleasure.